Ladies and gentlemen, imagine for a moment a man who has built his public identity around power, dominance, and unshakable confidence, suddenly showing cracks in the armor. Imagine a figure who has stood before cheering crowds, who has promised strength, victory, and resilience, now confronted by a wave of panic, uncertainty, and visible signs of weakness. Tonight, we are not simply discussing politics as usual. Tonight, we are facing the unraveling of a narrative that once seemed invincible. We are staring at the reality of a panicked Donald Trump, exhibiting fatal signs that have begun to develop, not in a distant liberal enclave, not in the halls of Washington power, but in the very heart of a furious red state, a place he once called his fortress of loyalty and strength. It is in this dramatic setting that the true measure of Trump's influence, his health, both political and personal, and his grip on the Republican Party is being tested like never before. People have long wondered what it would take to shake the confidence of a man who presents himself as immune to fear, who thrives on chaos, who uses fury as fuel. And now, in the very states that once carried him to victory, the ground is shifting beneath his feet. There is anger, there is discontent, and there is a rising sense that the king who once commanded loyalty with a tweet, with a rally, with a chant of "Make America Great Again" is suddenly losing control. The panic is not hidden. It is written in his tone, in his words, in his frantic gestures on stage as he lashes out against enemies real and imagined. When he steps into these red states, the very places that built the myth of Trump as unstoppable, the applause is still there, yes, but behind it is a crackle of unease, a sense that something has changed. There are whispers in the crowd, furrowed brows among the faithful, even quiet skepticism from those who once shouted until their voices gave out. And when you listen closely, you can hear it. The sound of doubt creeping into a movement that once thrived on blind devotion. Trump's panic is not merely a mood, it is a fatal sign, a symptom of something deeper. His words come faster, his accusations grow wilder, his attacks more desperate. Where once he had the swagger of certainty, now he has the tremor of a man haunted by time, haunted by investigations, haunted by the growing awareness that his grip is not eternal. Political analysts call it fatigue. Supporters call it distraction. Critics call it unraveling. But whatever name you give it, the reality is the same. The image of dominance is cracking, and it is cracking in the worst possible place for him, right in the center of his own base. These red states were supposed to be safe havens, bastions, of loyalty that would never waver, places where the Trump name was etched into the landscape like a monument. Yet, even here, the signs of panic emerge. Poll numbers that once seemed untouchable begin to slide. Local leaders who once followed every word with obedience now hesitate, calculating their own futures. Republican voters, worn down by the constant storms of controversy, begin to ask questions they never dared ask before. Is this man truly strong? Is he truly the leader for the battles ahead? Or is he a shadow of the figure they once believed could bulldoze his way through Washington and rewrite the rules of power? It is one thing for critics to question Trump's strength. It is quite another when the questioning begins inside the walls of his own kingdom. And that is what makes this moment so significant. In a furious red state, where passion for Trump once burned like wildfire, there are embers of doubt, sparks of division, and murmurs of fear. Fear that the man who embodied their anger may no longer have the stamina to carry it. Fear that the movement built on his personality is collapsing under the weight of his own panic. And make no mistake, panic is contagious. When a leader shows cracks, when his energy turns from confident to defensive, when his message shifts from bold vision to constant grievance, followers feel it. They may not admit it in public. They may still wave the signs and wear the hats. But in private, they talk. They question. They wonder if this is truly the figure who can deliver victory again. In politics, perception is reality. And the perception of Trump right now is one of a man on edge, a man out of breath, a man lashing out at shadows because he knows the real enemy is his own decline. The fatal signs developing in Trump are not only political, they are physical, emotional, and psychological. His energy on stage is different. His language is more scattered. His eyes dart. His gestures grow more erratic. His need for constant validation more desperate. For years, he thrived on chaos, but now chaos seems to be consuming him rather than fueling him. Reporters who follow him closely note the visible toll, the hesitations, the slips of the tongue, the uncharacteristic pauses. To his critics, these are proof of decline. To his allies, they are unspoken worries. But to the American people, they are unmistakable signals that the man who once commanded the stage is fading. Think of the symbolism here. In the heart of a furious red state, Trump should be at his strongest, surrounded by loyalists who reinforce his confidence. And yet even here, panic bleeds through his words. He warns of betrayal. He accuses fellow Republicans of disloyalty. He rants about conspiracies that grow wilder by the day. This is not the language of a confident leader. It is the language of a man grasping for control, a man haunted by the realization that time and power are slipping through his fingers. And so, we are left to witness a remarkable spectacle. A once dominant figure unraveling in his own stronghold, a panicked leader showing fatal signs of decline in the very places he once claimed as unshakable territory. His supporters feel it. His rivals see it. The media documents it. And history will record it. Trump's panic is not just his own. It radiates outward, infecting his movement, destabilizing his party, and reshaping the political landscape of America. For years, red states were the bedrock of his identity. Now they are becoming the stage for his unraveling. And as the signs grow more fatal, as the cracks widen, as the panic deepens, one thing becomes clear. The story of Trump is no longer one of unstoppable dominance, but of a man desperately fighting against the tide of his own decline. And as we continue to watch this spectacle unfold, it becomes impossible to ignore how the panic in Trump's voice is reshaping the very foundation of his movement. When a leader who once carried himself like an unshakable tower begins to show tremors, those around him feel it deeply. His closest allies, once so willing to echo every phrase, now tread carefully. Some are still shouting his slogans with enthusiasm, but others speak more softly, cautiously, as though they sense that the invincibility of their leader is no longer guaranteed. And what happens in a movement built around the image of strength when that strength falters? The answer is fragmentation. You can already see it. Small cracks forming into larger ones, quiet disagreements evolving into public disputes, and an aura of confusion hanging over what was once unified by blind loyalty. This is the dangerous truth about movements centered on one man. When the man begins to show fatal signs, the entire movement shakes. For years, Trump made himself the brand, the energy, the fuel that carried millions. He projected himself as the sole figure capable of fighting for the people against the so-called establishment. But when that figure becomes visibly panicked, when his words drip with fear rather than confidence, when his gestures signal desperation rather than strength, the movement begins to lose its central anchor. And in a furious red state, where loyalty was once unshakable, that loss is more dramatic than anywhere else. Think about the psychology of Trump's base. These are not casual supporters who follow politics once in a while. These are men and women who built their identity around him. They saw him as the fighter who spoke their language, who mocked their enemies, who gave them a sense of belonging and purpose. They weren't just cheering for a politician. They were cheering for a symbol of their anger and pride. Now imagine the dissonance they feel when that symbol starts to appear tired, fragile, and panicked. It is like watching a hero stumble in slow motion. They clap, yes, but their eyes tell a different story. They wave the flags, but their voices don't have the same thunder. Deep inside, they sense it, the fatal signs that this chapter may be closing. What makes this moment even more striking is the way Trump himself reacts. Instead of calming the waters, instead of projecting renewed confidence, he doubles down on panic. He lashes out at reporters, calls out allies, spins tales of betrayal and conspiracy at every turn. His sentences sometimes stretch into incoherence, his repetitions more frantic than emphatic. And when a leader speaks this way, it is not the language of strength. It is the language of a man running from something he cannot control. His audience knows it, and so does he. There is also the element of age and time. The years of constant rallies, investigations, controversies, and battles have left their mark. He was once the showman who could command a stage for hours, barely pausing for breath. Now, there are moments when he seems winded, moments when his energy dips, moments when the crowd's energy seems to prop him up more than the other way around. These are not trivial observations. They are the fatal signs that remind people even the most dominant figures are not immune to decline. And for a movement that has no replacement for its leader, this decline is a devastating reality.